Are back live. And I forgot, of course, to start the meeting by introducing myself. I'm Seth Baumgartz. I represent the Bennington Senate District in the State Senate, and I'm chair of the Education Committee. And with me is
Senator Acacia Rom Hinsdale. This is my Senate district, my school district. Whether or not you want to take credit, there are people in this room who taught my husband here. So really grateful to be here and show off our school district for our soon to be here colleagues.
and Senator Steve Pepper will be joining us any minute from the Addison Senate District. But we're going to get started because we're on a tight time frame and we're a little bit behind. And so now we're going to have all of you introduce yourselves.
I'm Jessica Hoskins. I'm the Director of Special Services at CU.
Catherine Riley, the principal at CU.
Adam Bucking, superintendent.
So I think we're supposed to move around,
I
right?
think so. I think that'd be
Okay.
easier.
You get front row.
Okay.
We tried to find a very small room to make you feel comfortable, like we're in the State House.
Yeah.
But we ended up here. So as I said, my name is Adam Bunting. I'm superintendent here. Also a former principal, house director, teacher, student. So I've been in the district for quite a few years. My goal this morning in this presentation is to achieve two goals. First of all, it's to answer a question that Senator Baumgartz put forward in an email to us. So what is education like in a high school where the principal can't know every student's name? I was excited when I saw that question because it is something that we have thought about deeply here for many, many years. And then the second goal that I have this morning is just to familiarize you with one of our core guiding principles. And I'm going to try to focus your attention today as you're moving through the building on looking for this. So we have 10 CBSD guiding principles. And the very first one is at the heart of learning is story. We seek story to honor identity, forge connection, build proficiency, and inspire direction. And those are fancy words. So our goal is to make sure that what you see is as good as that sounds, and it's aspirational. So we're always moving in that direction. Actually, I think the best way probably to capture what this principle is to talk about a student named Kevin. So Kevin was our opening speaker for our convocation this year, which we have about, I think we're about almost 500 faculty and administrators there. So this is in August. Kevin graduated in 2018, 2017, I think. And I hadn't seen him for years. And I ran into him at Clay's Barbershop. Little shout out to Clay. Doubt he's watching, but if you were. This summer, and my typical practice when I go to the barber is you have to wait for a while. I bring my computer, and I remember this day vividly this summer because I'm in it. I actually think I was doing some work around Act 73. I was feeling a little bit anxious. My blood pressure was a little bit high. And then all of a sudden I hear, "Mr. Bunting?" And I look up and I see Kevin and his mother. And Kevin describes himself as having high functioning autism. And I think what we know about students when they graduate high school, students with special needs, is that sometimes what they experience as adults is almost anticlimactic or a decline from what one experiences in high school because there's so much community built into a high school. So immediately my crankiness went away. I stood up, I saw Kevin, I saw his mom, and I said, "Kevin, what have you been up to?" And he described his business venture that he was in called Games with Kevin. He is leading like Family Feud like games for communities to bring people together. And I was like, "Kevin, you are coming to convocation and you are leading this for our school community." And he's like, "How many people are there?" I'm like, 500 or so. He didn't didn't bat an eye. Great, I'll be there. What really struck me with that interaction was what his mom said to me. And she said, we wouldn't have this business and we wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for what he experienced at CVU and at Wilson. He went to Wilson Second School. And I began reflecting on what were the opportunities that Kevin had while he was here. So one, you can see he was part of Unified Basketball, had the chance for the school to go all the way to Seattle, become national champions. It's hard to replicate that experience, but it was the unified experience that was really powerful for him. This is a picture of his graduation challenge that I somehow found in my emails, where he was working with a theater class to develop social stories that they were then videoing. So students on the spectrum could practice those stories. And then I found this email that he had sent where he created a Family Feud showdown for our faculty and staff and our students in Winter Carnival. These are just 3 small examples. But I raised them, and he did a fantastic job, by the way. And this is him at Charlotte afterwards. So we offered his services and schools snapped him up immediately to work with students. So this quote is the one that I'm looking at. So Megan Metzler, our board chair, when she hired me, said, I don't want you to hear me tell stories of the unicorn. I want to, and this is a sanitized version, I want a herd of blank unicorns. That was my way of interpreting what she said as, we've got to build a system. We have to not highlight just individual stories that make us sound great, but we've got to actually do the work to make sure this happens for all students. So I'm gonna share with you some of the systems today. I'm gonna ask Catherine to speak about our house system, our advisory system that leads to some of these outcomes that we're talking about, where students thrive with identity, connection, proficiency, and direction. I also want to just take a minute to dispel some of the negative narrative, I hope, around education. I hope that happens today. You'll see this is I think a quote from the governor on the left. This New England nosedive story that came out in the Globe was a pretty powerful story that looks at kind of Vermont and Maine decline in NAEP reading scores from 2014. Problem with NAEP is it can't be disaggregated by district. So the articles like this and some of the narratives that we're seeing would have you believe that our students are 30% proficient, 30-ish% proficient in literacy and math. That's simply not the case. And unfortunately, I think I'm fearful about some of this negative narrative right now about budgets going down with that rhetoric across our state. I'd also say there's a CBSD misconception out there that I'd like people to become more aware of. I was told several times in my first year as a superintendent, don't sound like you're complaining coming from Chittenden County. People perceive us as having a lot of resources, and we do have resources. That's extremely true. We also in our district have 906 families right now who are experiencing economic disadvantage, up from 740 a year ago. And then we also have 100 multilingual students. When I look at that 906 number, that's bigger than some districts in the state. So I want to remind people of that.
How many students in your district?
Almost 4,000, so about 3,600 right now. Weighted pupils is like 52 or somewhere around there.
And are you measuring that by free or reduced lunch?
Mhm. Yeah. As best we can. I mean, it's become harder with universal.
Yeah.
So, and so when we look at, we know early literacy is really important. On our spring iReady test, we had 87% of our third graders who were proficient or above in literacy. That's a pretty remarkable number. And the iReady assessment is correlated with the Vermont, the SBAC tests that we do, the VTCAP, and that's would also be correlated with NAEP. These are literacy scores. What happens sometimes in fourth grade is you'll see literacy scores drop because it goes from learning to read to reading to learn, I believe is what it's called. So you'll see these numbers drop. But even with this drop, you'll see like 93% in third grade, and this is by town. I took the names of the towns out. You'll see 77 in literacy and in math, and then 70 up through fifth grade. And that tends to be true in iReady. This is students this year, grades 3 through 10, who are ready for grade level instruction. So those numbers would counter some of the narrative that we're seeing.
I'm sure you'll talk about this, but what are you doing, to do it now or later, but for the kids who aren't at proficiency? How are we picking them up?
And that's really that's why this slide is so important. So if you look at our students, our proficiency rate, proficient or above for ELA, and then if you look in that in comparison with students in the IEPs, there's quite a discrepancy there. Part of that discrepancy is to be qualified for an IEP, you do have to be struggling, typically in an academic area like literacy or math. But that's something that we need to think about as a district. And again, I don't want to paint things as cheerier than they are. Jess, do you want to throw anything on that question about things that we're doing?
No, I think that point about, in order to qualify for special education, you have to be showing adverse effect, and need for specialized instruction in a basic skill area. So there's expected to be a gap in proficiency rates, and that gap is pretty big. I was doing a lot of work in our district on our MTSS systems to address that.
So I want to get two, and this is math. We can come back to some of this. So I put out some of those proficiency numbers, again, to counter a narrative, but this portion of the presentation really is about answering, how do we know all kids, right? How do we get to that guiding principle of seeing student story in a high school that's this large? I'd say we've been working on what we call our engagement framework for over a decade. And at its core, it's about seeing student story. But it is about seeing each student's identity, connection, direction, and proficiency. I'm going to see how many times I can say that in this presentation. And responding to that.
Grab a chair and pull it up.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, well,
Sure.
he's settling in, Senator Heffernan, the principal does, I imagine, know the names and stories of all the kids. I don't know if that's like the punchline or something, but I went to high school with 4,800 kids, so I just feel like we're not talking about not knowing kids.
I think one of the questions is how do you know? I mean, there are,
Okay,
with 1,300 students,
right,
there are 1,300 individual stories.
yeah,
How do you know those stories with depth? I think is what I'm trying
okay,
to
okay,
answer.
so you know their names.
And the question came from Senator
Well,
Bongard.
what I said was, well, the principal can't possibly know every single kid.
Right.
And maybe we'll hear it too, but that's okay. That's not the point. The point is, what do you do in a
Okay.
larger school, and how do you meet those
Sure.
challenges in a larger setting?
I just want us to be
Yeah.
mentally flexible about what large is, and, I think I hear from CVSD graduates all the time that the principal and the teachers know them who graduated and new students.
Yeah. In a way, that's the point, is how do you work around that? How do you do that in a large school?
But you do have to do it with intention.
Yeah.
Because knowing again, there's knowing names and then there's knowing.
Mhm.
And so, this for us, I think this ethic, it goes back to 2016, and I'll talk about, it goes back way farther than that, actually. But we've taken on the job of actually mapping and measuring student engagement.
Mhm.
And we've developed what we call focus scores, which I could go into, but it's we can look at each individual student in terms of direction. How much relevance are they experiencing in their learning? Do they have a sense of purpose? Again, with a sense of purpose, human beings are incredibly resilient. And I think about Kevin and what he was doing at the story at the outset of this. Like, part of his success as an adult is because he had a sense of purpose in his learning. Part of that was building community through games, something he experienced. Proficiency, we talked about connection, students experiencing deep relationships with their peers, with adults. There is no better learning or social emotional learning, in my opinion, than actually being a part of the community and being an engaged and active member. We can provide all the lessons we want in the classroom, and that's important, but we need to see if our students do have this connection. And then the idea of identity, do you have a sense of belonging at the school that you're in? Does your school see you? Are you known? Do you see yourself in the curriculum? Are you learning about who you are through this process of your educational journey? So I'd say one thing that we're doing that's a little unusual in this district is we are mapping by kid, and then our goal is to intervene acutely and systemically.
And then how are you mapping that by doing a survey,
It's a combination. We're triangulating the data. So we have a perception survey that's confidential but not anonymous, which is really important for each of our students. And then we're looking at even standardized assessments, what's happening within the classroom. And then we're looking at also things like what co-curricular. And to go to the connection piece, okay, you say you have a trusted adult. Who is that trusted adult? List their name. One of the best things that you see when we give this survey as a high school is teachers will reach out to one another and be like, hey, did you know you're the student's trusted adult? And a lot of times the response from the faculty is, oh, I didn't know I held that place in that student's life. This now is a relationship I may pay a little bit of a different, put a different focus on. So I use this slide. I'm going to be really fast in the story. 2016, I think I was a token educator on the governor's opioid council. Incredible. That's what I thought it was going to be. Incredible learning experience for me as an educator to be talking about prevention and intervention. One of the most powerful things that I walked away with from some of the learning that we did in that committee was thinking about drug prevention. And we focused on the Icelandic model. People in our district almost become nauseous when I start talking about this because I've shared it so many times. But I was blown away by these numbers over a 20-year period that Iceland somehow went from the country that struggled the most with substance use disorder and use in young people to the European country that fared the best. And when you think about what they did, they invested in their youth, they looked at third space, but they did social mapping and made sure that students were connected with groups, with one another. They stipended to every family so that people could do that. I mean, it was just, to me, it was like in a country where when we talk about substance use, we sort of throw up our hands and say prevention, that seems impossible. To see that it's possible made me think, well, if we can do this for drug prevention, why can't we do this every day in our high schools with deep engagement for our kids? So that's when we began doing some of the perception survey that you were talking about. And we would build these heat maps again, like we'd be looking at, do you have an adult in this high school, like that, someone that you can talk to get help? You see the darker colors is a deeper density of students who strongly agree with that statement, with 8 students who say no. We have 8 students who are saying, I'm not experiencing friends at school. What we said is like, okay, if you put that in percentages, it looks great, right? 8, it's the low percentage. But if you look at 8 as the number of human beings, no, we got to know who those kids are. We have to reach out and we have to find ways to connect them.
So it is disaggregated, like they know when they're taking the survey, this is like a cry for help or something. Somebody's gonna probably.
Yeah,
get
I
back to
mean,
me.
and again, we used to have these concern scores. So the story that I often
Good
tell.
morning, Hawks, and happy
Here we
birthday. The Threads Club invites you to the Socrates Cafe tonight in the CVU Library.
That's
from
into the
6:30
identity.
to 8:30. Food and drink will be provided. We encourage students, teachers, parents, caregivers to contribute to a great discussion. The question, what does it mean to live a good life? The New American Outreach Club is hosting a winter clothing drive. Donation bins are located in the main office and house offices through Wednesday, December 17th.
Hello, this is Carmen Wilbur. managing editor of the Hawk's Nest, our school newspaper. Today marks the start of our first annual winter silent auction going on all this week. There's an email in your inboxes where you can bid for items generously donated by our local businesses. All proceeds go to the paper in order to support student journalism. Thank you for participating.
Photo Club Contest. The themes are warmth, landscape, and food. If your work is selected, you earn bragging rights and a shout out at CVU celebrations. Entries are due Tuesday, December 16th. Submissions should be high resolution and renamed with the title of your image. Email entries to emclean@cvsdvt.org. The annual CVU clothing swap is Thursday, December 18th in the mini gym. Please consider donating any clothes that you no longer have use for, have outgrown, or simply you feel like giving to your community. Donations can be dropped off in room 120 from December 1st to 9th. And now our guest talks for the day. Reed McCavey, Grant Jacobs, and Charlie Moore.
That last bit you heard was the Red Hawk call.
Yeah.
So,
Every day that
right.
they do that.
Different guests every day.
Yeah.
That's one of my advisories right now. I'm wondering about, advisory.
Yeah.
We do now.
What's right after advisory?
A tour, but we could shorten the tour.
I think we could probably wrap this up in 3 or 4 minutes. I just want you to talk about.
Sure.
So the bottom line is, with intention, this goes back to Megan Messer's point, our board chair, you have to have systems to know students. You just heard a bunch of it. That's like presentation's over from what the students were just talking about, right? You want to say a word about these programs?
And we can come back and you can finish. I didn't want to cut my boss short. I did want you, when Senator Baumgart and I talked, I did want you to see advisory, and really get a sense of what that feels like. And I have a birthday advisory, so I definitely can't miss advisory day. So the school's divided into 4 houses. We actually had Barbara Snelling, 2 of her 2 children here, before the Thanksgiving break to talk about, Barbara Snelling and how CVU her history connected to the school, which was great. So we have Snelling, Nichols, Chittenden, and Fairbanks. And then within the house, we have advisory. So every adult faculty member has 10 to 14 students that they have within their advisory. And when advisory goes well, that is students' home within the building. My guess is that's one of the things Adam misses most about being in central office, because he was an excellent advisor and had a really tight knit group of kids. And then, so that's kind of your small home within the school. And then when you arrive at CVU, you're coming from 4 different sending schools plus private schools, or you're new to the area and you go into a 9th grade program, which is by design. The classes are a little bit smaller than maybe the 10th grade classes, but you have 6 educators who kind of wrap around between 75 to 90, depending on the year, 9th graders, and really focus on building community and helping students understand kind of the school motto, which is take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the place. And they really get to know students. So to your point about every student who walks in the door, do I know their name as a principal? No, I know all the senior names. I did that this summer. I have playing cards. I know all the senior names. I'm working on the juniors right now, but do I really, to Adam's point, do I know their whole story? Can I recognize them? It's important to know their names, but the core teachers really get to know student stories. The advisors really get to know their advisees' stories. And the family stories. I think that's one of the most powerful systems we have in the building. And we also have 3 days a week, we have C3, which is community, academic connection and clubs, where students have an opportunity to join groups that, they would like to connect with. It happens during the school day. This happened, he was 5 years old.
Post-COVID response,
Yeah.
yeah, 4 or 5 years.
2021. And the idea is that it's more equitable when it happens within the school day. And it opens students up to a lot of interest they, may already have or things that they're unfamiliar with. And all adults most adults in the building have a rise. Some staff have rises. I run an amnesty club during one of the rises, during one of the C3s. And then at the end of the year, we have a 10-day program called Rise, which is
Student experiences.
again, that started under Superintendent Bunting. But it's an opportunity for students to really dive deeply into an area of interest or to explore an area of interest. And
That was like key. Correct? Key or place.
Rutland has an end of year program
Yeah.
and Burlington
Like-
has an end of year program.
Yeah. Oh, you mean, yeah? Or-
Yes is Burlington.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the seniors and possibly juniors or just.
This is the whole school for us.
This is not
Everything.
through 12. Yep. And I remember talking to Rutland when we were looking into this, and I don't know how their program has evolved.
Mhm.
We're still evolving, but right now it's the end of the year for 10 days. There are a couple trips that go out during that time. All day programs, some half day programs, and, it's a really nice way to end the school year. Feels very different than ending it where you're kind of going up to the wire assessment and then graduation.
The future of what putting nail on it.
Right. Yep, there are independent opportunities for students, and we're looking at how do we no longer have a program which is called Grad Challenge, which your husband did when he was here, and,
They lumped that in Rutland, but it hiked the long trail.
yeah. Is that what he did for his Grad Challenge?
Yeah.
Yep. So we're looking at how do we evolve or iterate this program so it looks different when you're in 9th and 10th grade and when you're in 11th and 12th grade. And how do we incorporate even more community service, which we have some community service, but how do we kind of push students in areas they may or may not be as comfortable as part of the program? I think those are three of the systems, the really solid systems that we have that help students be really known in the building. They are known by their advisor. They're really known by their core teachers systemically. And then, the Rise, when you think 10 days, I think one of the concerns teachers had was how am I going to get to know kids in 10 days? Because it's so intense, it happens really quickly. And so I think that program has been really influential as well. What do you want to do now? Do you want to?
See, how much time do we have? Can we?
We can come,
break?
we can break and then come back and
Yeah,
finish.
yeah. We only have like 2 more slides left.
Okay. So I think what we'll do is I will ask you